I'm Paul Nixon.
And I'm Clarice Nixon. We are college educators, and this is College Hacks. Today we're talking about asking for an extension. And remember the golden rule here, context matters. Your professor has a context through which they're receiving your message, just like you have a context through which you're sending a message.
So when asking for an extension, before actually you ask for an extension, check the syllabus. The teacher has outlined their policies for all of these things in the syllabus. That's what the syllabus is for.
Right.
So check the syllabus and look for extension policies and see if your situation fits into that policy. Now, I'm not saying that if your situation doesn't fit, you shouldn't ask.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I think you should ask because what's the harm? But if your situation fits into the policy, you should know that going in.
Exactly.
And that'll help frame your question and frame your request. So what are some valid reasons that some professors might have where they might allow you to have an extension?
So the first one that comes to mind is some kind of serious illness or injury. That's not usually something you can control, particularly during this pandemic.
Right.
If you happen to get, and we hope you don't,
Please don't.
If you happen to get COVID-19 and have to go in isolation or quarantine or something like that, that's a lot of moving parts during that transition. So that's definitely something that I would consider a valid reason for an extension. Another valid reason for an extension would be a family emergency. Again, that's not really something you have control over. You don't usually plan emergencies ahead of time. Emergencies just happen and spring up in your life. So if that happens, typically the professor will be gracious and understanding because you're going through something that you have no control over in terms of your family.
What about technical difficulties? Would that be a valid reason?
It depends.
Okay.
So the reason why I say it depends is because sometimes technical difficulties can be avoided through time management.
Okay.
So for example, if you didn't manage your time well and you're printing something right before you have to turn it in for class and the printer is broken, you don't have control over the printer being broken, but if you had tried to print your document earlier, you would have had time to fix that issue and still get to class on time. I would say too, if you happen to accidentally drop your laptop and your laptop is broken, depending on the professor, I would say, depending on the situation, I might say, well, you could have gone to the library, like other computers around you for now that you can use, or are you just sitting and waiting for your laptop to be fixed in 2 weeks? But if something happens right before class and I needed something on your computer, this is a tough one. It depends.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of variables here.
Yeah. If your laptop breaks, for example, and your assignment is on there, I would say, how come you didn't have your laptop backed up online? I mean, not your laptop, but your document.
Your document. By the way, just a quick, have your stuff backed up online. Google Drive, Dropbox,
Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud.
Yeah.
All of them give you a certain amount of free storage.
Yeah.
And the only time that amount of free storage fills up is if you put media on there. Right. So if you have movies or TV shows or songs or pictures or something like that in your free storage, it'll eat up your free storage.
Right.
But if you use your free storage for documents, there's no way you're ever going to fill that space.
Yeah.
5 gigs of Word documents is like 100 years of Word documents. So I'm just saying you should have your stuff backed up online so that if something happens to your computer, you can go to another computer, log into the internet, and get the same stuff.
Right.
So for me, breaking your computer isn't necessarily a valid excuse for an extension because, in my opinion, you should have had it backed up online anyway, and you should have another option.
Another kind of technical difficulty might be your internet connection. A few months back, we had a terrible storm where I live, and it basically knocked out the city that my university is in. So there was no power, there was no internet, and all that kind of stuff. So to me, that's a valid reason because, again, that's something you had no control over. You also don't have control over when the power's even going to come back on. So you have no control over that. I would say, okay, let me give an extension for that.
So technical difficulties, it kind of depends on the situation. There are some situations in which you should have planned better.
Right.
And there are other situations in which you actually had no control
at all
over what was going on.
Okay, so then how do you even ask for an extension?
There are different ways to do this. I would say asking for an extension, it's perfectly okay to do it via email.
Right.
I would say it's perfectly fine.
As long as you follow the email guidelines that we talked about in a previous video.
Right.
When you're writing an email, there are still guidelines you need to use so that you come off as professional as possible.
And when you're asking for an extension in an email, I would say in addition to being professional, you have to be humble.
Right.
Because what you're asking for is a favor, really.
Yeah.
They don't have to do what you're what you're asking them for.
Right.
So you want to come across with humility. Don't come across like they owe you the thing that you're asking for. Even if, listen carefully, even if it's within the written policy.
Right.
Still don't come across like, hey, you owe this thing to me. You want to come across with humility, make a request, they'll respond to your request appropriately. And then, of course, if there's a problem, we'll move forward from there. But ask with humility. It's really, really important that you present yourself appropriately.